Hi Stampers, it's Lisa with Queen Bee Creations. Welcome to today's live. Today we are working on a fun card. It's kind of a mix of a slim line and a card in a box. Some of you may have seen I do quite a few card in a box cards that have this like 3D pop-up effect, and today we're combining it with a slimline card. So this is going to fold flat. It's going to fit into a business size envelope, like a number 10, or you can make your own. We also have patterns for that, just, cutting up some designer series paper and making the best of it. There's some really great patterns for card envelopes for slimline cards available out there, and I've even got a few myself. But I'm excited to show you how this one is done using the Jolly Delivery bundle. And this is a super fun bundle. It's even got a die that's going to create this cute little box. I made one so you guys know the size that it is. And that's going to be part of an upcoming class that I'm doing with Diane Evans. She and I are going to do this together. We're going to do a Zoom on November 1st. It's also going to be recorded, so if you can't make the Zoom live, then you can absolutely watch it afterwards. And the only thing you need to do to buy your ticket into it is to buy the Jolly Delivery bundle, the bundle, the designer series paper, and the embellishments from one of our stores, and then you get to attend the class for free. We're going to send you the packet that you need with all the materials to make 12 cards. There's going to be a Facebook group with games and prizes and all that good stuff. So if you like this bundle, this is something you're going to want to look into. It's going to be in my newsletter tomorrow, so make sure you're subscribed over there. And if you already have the bundle, that's fine. You can just order something of equal value and you still get into the class. So let me get you down onto the desk and we'll get started with this card. Okay, so as I said, this is our bundle, and this, of course, cuts out all the pieces on here. But then there's also this die here. And what this does is it creates a box. And you'll notice there's 3 of these little pieces here, and they've got little notches on them. And what you're going to do when you run it through your die cutting machine is you're going to line up those notches. So it's just going to fit in there like that, and you can choose which one of them that you want to use, because you can have 2 halves of a star, 2 halves of a heart, or 2 halves of a circle like I have here. And then the other side's going to cut this piece, which is going to create the hole that those are going to go into. Okay, so this is the box, and it's a great size because it's small enough that you can, carry them around in your purse, hand them out to people and not have to include a whole lot. Looks like it would fit, a Ghirardelli square, maybe some of those Merci candies. I'm going to check this weekend and see what kind of things we can put in there, because I think that's going to be fun for Christmas. And then you just pinch together these 2 pieces, which is easier when there's stuff in the box. And then those 2 things are going to fit through the hole, which is going to fasten it closed. Come on, it works. I got it in there. You saw it. I opened it up. But it's easier when there's something inside. There we go. Okay, there we go. It's a little wonky when it's empty. Okay, but this is the card we're focusing on. This is our mix of a card in a box, kind of a diorama on a slimline card. And to do that, we're going to start out with our slimline card base, which is 7 inches by 8.5. Okay, so 8.5 long. 7 inches this way, and we're going to score at 3.5. So that's going to get you this piece right here that ends up being 3.5 by 8.5. And then I have a piece to go on the inside that's going to be 3.25 by 8.25. So that's just going to be our standard layer inside. For the outside, to create our box portion, what I have here is a piece of cardstock that says Poppy Parade, which is the color we're working with. That's one of the colors in our designer series paper. The North Pole Delivery, which goes with the Jolly Delivery. This is, like I said, it's 8.5 by 3.5. We're going to score at 1/2 inch, 2.5, 6, and 8. Okay, 1/2 inch, 2.5, 6, and 8. And that's going to be our front piece. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a die and we're going to cut out of the middle. I'm going to use the Stylish Shapes. Because that's going to give us a basic square with the stitched edging. So I can use the largest one of those. It's going to cut right out of the middle. And this overall piece in the middle, this section of it is 3.5 by 3.5. So this is going to give us an equal border around our square. Then I have our inside pieces. These are going to be the two that are going to be the cross members inside here. Okay, so these two pieces right here. I have one that is 1 inch tall and one that is 1.5. They are 4.5 long, each of them are. And then they're scored at 1/2 inch and 4 inches. So basically 1/2 inch from either side. So this is going to be my stabilizer piece in the middle that's going to hold up our little diorama scene. And one is shorter than the other so that we can put one in front and that they're going to not block each other out. And then I have some basic white that I'm going to use to kind of create a snow slope. So these are 3.5 wide, and this one is by 2 inches. So it's, 1/2 inch taller so that we have some room to do our swooping across the top with our scissors. And then this one's going to go in front. So we're going to make this one a little shorter. So this is 1.5 inches. And again, we're going to slope that one. Okay, in order to just differentiate, have a little like sidewalk that our pieces are going to sit on, I have this little 1/2 inch by 3.5. I have two of them. There's another one here somewhere. And then I have the back piece that's going to be our background to the diorama. So this is 3.5 by 3.5. And that's what's going to go back here. Okay, so that's just a background. And then this piece here, again, the same designer series paper. So this is 4 3/4 by 3 1/4. I have some scraps of basic white that we're going to be cutting those out of. I have the strip that we're going to be creating our little slope of snow. So this is 1.5 by 4 3/4. As I said, scraps. Here's our other sidewalk. And then for this here, I wanted to be able to use that special delivery. And so I determined that that's going to fit onto a 3/8 inch. And so this is 1/2 inch. And that's giving me a little teeny tiny skinny border. But you can choose to make that wider if you want. You can use a 1/2 inch and a 3/4 inch. And it's just going to be a little bigger. I just was trying to keep it small so it was a little less intimidating or something. But those are all of our pieces. Okay. Oh, in addition to the pieces that come as the little pre-cut pieces, there's 2 sheets in the pack of designer series paper that are die cuts. And so they're already printed, colored, and then pre-cut. So these just pop right out. And so what I did is I just took and popped all of them out from my first set. This is my second set of the designer series paper because I've been playing with it so much. But I punched them all out, and then I just stuck them in a clear envelope that I keep inside my stamp case, making them really easy to grab hold of and use. Okay. So let's get started by doing the die cutting of the window. Okay, so I'm going to die cut this out. I'm going to center it in that section. Again, if you have trouble getting dies to stay put, you may want to use a Post-it note or some washi tape, something to hold it in place. But I have a tendency to live dangerously and just wing it, which doesn't always work out, but you know, we make the best of it. Oh, and then I forgot we have this little piece, which is just under 3.5 by 3.5. So it's like 3 3/8 by 3 3/8. I just wanted it to be able to fit in here without interfering with our score lines or hanging over the top. But that's going to be the window frame, you know, or the window that goes in our frame is this clear piece here. And that's just window sheet, acetate. Will it take extra postage? I don't believe so. It's going to depend on your post office because it's a little thick. It's not overly thick. What you want to do is see that it's going to be thin enough that it will go through their machines without hand canceling. But a number 10 business envelope doesn't usually take extra postage. I've seen some post offices let it go through just fine and they don't have any issues with it. And then I've had some people that sit there and they, you know, feel your envelope and, oh yeah, that's going to be thicker. That's going to need to be hand canceled. So, yeah, I can't really say. Like I said, it's going to depend on your post office. Okay, so in order to hold this in place, you have the option of either putting some tear and tape all the way around, or what I tend to do is put a glue dot in the corners. And you can either choose to put this on the corners of your window sheet, or you can stick it in the corners here. I'm doing it directly onto the card piece because I don't want it to be, you know, like that. I don't want it to do that on our window sheet. I want it to be all the way onto the cardstock. Which, you know, if it's cut right, it's probably going to be fine. But I'm just guaranteeing myself that it's going to be on the cardstock and not interfering with my window. Then I need that clear piece. And this is actually the bottom part. I keep my stamps in the case like this. And so the acetate that it comes on, I use for shaker cards and dioramas and such. And so that's where I got this piece. But we also do sell window sheets in our catalog. And I've also sometimes used the sheets from overhead projectors. Do you remember those? We used to have those like way back. The sheets that we would write on with our dry erase markers for the overhead projector. I've got a whole packet of those left over from the 80s that I have a tendency to use for cards like this too. But that's going to give us our window. And then we're going to adhere this to our card. So this is going to be assembling it just like a card in a box, kind of, in that we're going to start out by putting this right here on the edge. So I'm going to peel off this backing, and then I'm going to line it up, oh, careful, with the very edge of my card, making sure that I'm flush with the bottom and with the outside edge. Okay. Then what I want to do is I want to bend it right here. So right after my window. And I want to be sure that it's going to flush down like that. So what I'm going to do is peel off this piece here and then just close it on itself. Okay, that's going to make it pop up. Then what we want is our two little cross member pieces. And just like as if we were doing a card in a box, what I'm going to do is put some tear and tape on the edge. Have you made a card in a box before, or is this brand new? I do have several YouTube videos out there. The one I made, like my very first ever YouTube video, was a card in a box, like before I knew anything about audio and video and all of that. And my sound was very, very quiet. And the funny thing is that's still the video of all my card in a boxes that still gets the most views. I have redone that video with perfect audio and better cards, newer product, and it's the old one that keeps being seen. It's kind of frustrating. But you'll notice that this is going to adhere right in there, okay? But I'm going to start out with the one side, and you can choose to. You can either decorate them all up ahead of time before you put them in there, or you can do it afterwards. I think I'm going to go ahead and just put the snow and the street on it, just to make things a little easier on myself. And so I just did a little bit of a slope on one of them, and then I'm going to take my other one. That's my inside piece. Okay, these are my scraps for doing the bear. There it is. Okay. So this is the 3.5 by 1.5 piece. And I'm just going to, once again, just kind of slope it. Just to look like drifted snow. Now this way they're kind of the same, so I think what I would do is flip this over and have them go opposite directions. I don't know if you can see that. But when I put them in front of each other, I'm going to have the high part of the snow opposite rather than, because I kind of cut them the same, but because it's cardstock that's the same color on both sides, I can easily flip it. But I'm going to put my taller one on the back, and I can go ahead and raise it up some because I'm going to be using this on the bottom. So if I wanted to, I can just flush that with the bottom, and then nobody's going to notice the gap in the middle. So if when you do your slope, if you got a little crazy and it came down under, you wouldn't want this to show. So you would just raise that up and then just cover the gap down here with your gray. Okay. And you can, fold this over and make sure if it hangs over any, you can always snip it off from this side. But then I'm going to stick it inside my box. And I'm aligning it over here. I don't know if you can see real well, but I made the edge of it line up right on there. So it's 1/2 inch away from the back. Then what I'm going to do is fold this over and peel off this one. And then we're going to do the same idea, and then I'm going to flatten everything out with that bent back. And that's going to make it connect on that side. Okay, because of the way it's cut, you could probably just line it up with the edge, and it's going to, because it's 1/2 inch from the back, and that's a 1/2 inch little tab, it should line up perfectly. Okay, we can also put this in. So I just chose the houses kind of background that I'm going to use as my backdrop behind here. Okay, Susan said she's done diorama cards before and shadow boxes. Yeah, this is very similar. I really like to take something that we've already kind of done and put a new twist on it. Because then it's just, a little bit different. And people get excited when they see something that, they haven't seen before, or has a little extra something fun. I'm choosing to use the strip of basic gray on the top or on the bottom for that idea that that our houses and things should be grounded, which is a theory that I learned when I took scrapbooking university. It's something put on years and years and years ago. And the idea was that you didn't want your items to look like they're floating in midair. You want them to be grounded so that the houses are going to be sitting on the ground, not floating in the air. Did anybody else do scrapbooking university back in the, what was it, early 2000s? It's been a very long time. I still have the little pins and diplomas and things that I earned. I got my PhD. You got your bachelor's, your master's, and then a PhD. And I took all the classes I could. I thought it was so much fun. And we did it at the local scrapbook store that had a coffee shop right next door. So it was a lot of fun. Okay, so I have one side connected. My other side is right now kind of floating loose. I can probably butt it up and just let it touch, but I'm going to use my theory of flattening the box and then letting that kick backwards and attach naturally. Okay, so now I have my two cross members where everything's going to mount. They have the snow and the street. Was that at Archivers? No, Archivers was a scrapbook store. I remember that one. We didn't have one in our area, so it was just a privately owned small scrapbook store in Albuquerque. Archivers was a like a chain. It was a large organization, whereas this was just privately owned. but because they carried the brand that was putting on Scrapbooking University, they could offer it. Okay, so that piece was just a simple layer. So that's the back side of the designer series paper. You know how I always say that oftentimes our designer series paper may have one bold pattern on the front. You know, we have all our animals and our, you know, active things. And then on the back side, they're a little more subtle, usually. So we're using the dots because I thought it kind of looked like snow falling in the sky. Then I'm going to take our little pieces here and choose which ones that we want to use. So you can either put, you know, a little animal running along the front, or one of the delivery vehicles, or, I mean, there's any number of these little things that you can choose to use. In the back, I was using the houses. So I used a larger one in the back and a shorter one in the front. So we've got a couple little houses we could choose from. I want one house to be a little bigger. That one. There we go. I want one of these. So I'm going to pull out a tall building. And then I'm going to have a short building. And I wanted them to kind of go opposite directions. So since this one's going to go in the back and his little male thing is going that way, I'm going to choose the front house of the male thing going that way, just because I like the way they're going to face in opposite directions. And I'm going to put them on these ones I'm putting on the low side of our swoop in the snow. But I suppose it doesn't matter. Angie, did you have an archivers in your area? Did you hang out over there? I've seen them because we used to go on vacations. And when we went on vacations back then, I would want to visit scrapbook stores in the area where we were. Drove my husband crazy, but he played along. I'll put this one here. I guess it does look better on the high slope because then the mailbox is kind of above the snow, but they both work. And then you can choose if you wanted to add some little animals in there, some little miniature postage things. There's all kinds of fun things that you can add. You can add a little truck going that way. I want my truck to go that way for sure. I can either do red or I want this little blue one with the Christmas tree. Yep, I started in the early 90s, maybe even late 80s. I don't know, it was a long time ago. Because it was before I had kids, and I started with Creative Memories way back when. And I remember we used to have those sticker letters. You would have this whole sheet of letters, you know, and you'd have multiple A's and E's in our common letters, but I was still forever running out of the letters that I needed and not having the right ones. And so we would be cutting apart, take a capital R and turn it into a P with our scissors. We were cutting them down, and somebody says, "Oh my gosh, you need a set of stamps." And I'm like, "A what?" And she goes, "Yeah, you get a set of stamps from Stampin' Up, and they have these letters, and then you just buy ink pads, and you never run out of a letter again." And I went, "Oh my gosh, what is this? I have to know of this magic." And so that's how I found Stampin' Up, like way back. Oh gosh, that would have been late 90s, because I went to the 1998 Stampin' Up convention when we had our 10-year anniversary. And I remember getting a picture with Shelly way back then. I still have it somewhere. I should dig that out. But when the kids, grew up a little and went to school, I went back to, a regular job and couldn't always maintain my demonstratorship. I was, on and off. I never went away from it completely, but I didn't keep my membership. So that very first number I had, I wish I still had. That would have been really fun to have. But my demo number changed every time I dropped and restarted. Okay. So now I'm going to bring in our rubber stamps, and we're going to do a little bit of stamping. So I'm going to find that special delivery, and that's going to be words. So I'm going to line that up on a line on my grid paper, and then I'm going to line up my block with the grid paper as I pick it up. So that will help keep it straight. Knocked something on the ground. Big surprise. And then I also want the bear and my little mailbox. With the photopolymer stamps, I have a tendency to lay them, well, all stamps, but the photopolymers especially, I like to lay them down onto my desk and then pick them up with the block. Because if I take this to my block and I set it on here, there's a chance that I could, twist it a little and not have it go on there exactly straight. So if I lay it down on my desk and let it naturally take its form, then I can come back and pick it up with my block, and then I know it's in the form that the artist had designed it to be. It's especially important with like lines and things, words that are going to, you don't, I don't want to say you don't always, but most times you don't want your words to be arched at all. I mean, sometimes you can. You could lay it down on your block and on purpose give it a little bit of an arch. I mean, that is kind of the beauty of photopolymer, but most times you don't want it to do that. Most times you want it to just kind of fall on its own, be nice and straight, and then pick it up with your block. But I'm going to use garden green for the words for the special delivery. And I'm putting it over a colored backdrop. And it doesn't have to be the one I'm going to put it on. I just want a color behind it because white on white kind of fools my eyes. And I want to know where the edges are. So when I stamp straight down from the top, that I am getting into the area that it's not going to be, none of my letters are cut off. It all fits inside that section. Okay, then I'm going to give it a little bit of an angled snip. And then I want that angle to be the same on my green. So I can either clip it now, or we can go ahead and glue it down and then come back and clip it. But I want to follow that same angle and give it a border that's even. Okay. And then I can come back here and just snip this off. And I didn't go super straight, so maybe it's best to snip it off with the trimmer. There we go. The trimmer gives it a nice, clean, straight edge. Then, because I'm going to be coloring with Stampin' Blends, I want to stamp my outline with Memento black ink. And because it's a large block, I'm more comfortable turning my pad over and inking this way. Oh, I remember wheel stamps, yeah. I didn't like them a whole lot on regular stuff. I remember we used them on paper bags. We had white paper, like lunch sacks, and we would roll the wheels all over them and decorate them. And then we did an accordion fan on the top where we just folded back and forth every ½ inch. And then we pulled the sides up so it did that fan on the top of a bag. Gosh, that was a long time ago. Okay, now you can choose to either fussy cut these out, or like I said, there are dies that will go ahead and cut these out. Sometimes I will cut them out ahead of time. Sometimes I color them first because it is sometimes easier to have that excess paper to be able to, you know, spin it around. So I'm going to color first and then we'll die cut. I start with my dark. And then I'm going to come in with the light and fill in. When I come in with my light, I go right over the top of the dark. Because laying the color on top is what helps it to bleed, and the bleeding is what's going to make it blend together. If it's not blending, the chances are you probably need more ink. People tend to kind of go a little light-handed with the Stampin' Blends. And you don't want to be too light. You want to be sure that it goes all the way through. That's why I always color on scrap paper underneath. My grid paper is always under there because it will indeed go all the way through the cardstock. And that's good and on purpose. Thank you, Angie. Yes, there are some things that we forgot. I was watching Janet Wakeland the other day, and she actually used a technique I'm going to share with you soon. One of those things we used a long time ago, and I had forgot, where she had a grater and she was grating our cardstock in order to make flocking. Do you remember flocking? We used to have Button Bear and Bow Bear, and we had flocking in a jar that we could put on it that made it like fuzzy. Well, she was creating her own out of cardstock, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's like, I remember that from like so long ago. But everything kind of comes full circle, you know? We just need to sometimes be reminded. Again, you want to remember that you want to keep your hand comfortable as you're coloring. So go ahead and spin the paper rather than spinning your hand so that you can be in the most comfortable position, which will help you be more accurate with your coloring. I've got here Poppy Parade, Blueberry Bushel, and then this is Shaded Spruce. Since we don't have Garden Green Stampin' Blends, which I think is odd, but maybe they had trouble getting the color exact. I don't know. There's only a very few colors that we don't have the Stampin' Blends for. Has anybody bought this bundle yet, or will you be buying it and joining me for our online class? It's a very fun bundle. Okay, so I'm going to line this up and then feed that through my machine. As I said, I will have the registration form ready later on today, and I will put that in tomorrow's newsletter, which we should be getting the announcement about our October recruiting special. So if you've been thinking that maybe you want to start selling Stampin' Up, or maybe you just want to buy at a discount, or you want to do some Christmas shopping with Stampin' Up and get that at a discount, there's going to be a great deal coming up for October, and I would love for you to be part of our Creative Royalty team. We have ladies from all over the United States, and we have a lot of fun at our team meetings, always doing some kind of a card like this, but they get to craft along with me. They get all of the measurements ahead of time and get to create at the same time I do. Plus, they get to take my classes for free and get my tutorials for free. Not the books, but all of my, the 6 for 10 type tutorials I offer in my store. All of my team members are able to get those for free. So you could save Stampin' Up money on Stampin' Up and on tutorials and get one-on-one access with me, which hopefully is a good thing. And if you just want to ask some more questions or just find out a little more about it, there's absolutely no obligation to ask questions and just find out more about it. So I would encourage that. If you wanted to contact me, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. Okay, again, I think I'd probably create some kind of a scene. Again, they look like they're kind of floating. So let's see, we can either run a strip of gray or we can color a strip of gray. Or green. I think we run across grass. And I think I'm going to come in with gray granite. And I'm just going to give it just a touch of color along the bottom. So I'm swirling the head on my ink pad, and then I'm kind of touching it on the scrap paper first, and then swirling onto my project. So just giving it a little bit of something along the bottom. You could also do that with sponge daubers or sponges or anything, just to give it a little extra something. I'm not super happy with how that's coming out, so let's just switch gears and let's go with this. I think this will make it match the front a little better. Yeah, I think I like that. Matches the front better. Wasn't that the sponging was bad, I like it when the front coordinates with the back. Or the inside with the outside, you know what I mean. And then this is Merry Christmas and Happy Wishes. Let's bring back our garden green. And there we go. There's the inside of our Slimline diorama, card in a box, pop-up card for Christmas using the Jolly Delivery bundle and the North Pole Delivery Designer Series paper. So there we go. I hope you enjoyed today's project and you give it a try. If you have any questions on anything we've talked about today or have interest in joining my Creative Royalty team, I would love to talk with you and answer any questions that I can. But other than that, I will see you on Thursday for another Stamping Made Simple video. And I'll get that scheduled soon so you'll know what we have coming up. But thank you for being here, and I will talk to you all soon. Thanks. Bye.